Becca, so we have a live professional musician that we get to interview today. So that made me think about my experiences of attempting to learn to play instruments.
Oh,
So I was probably about 11 or 12, and for whatever reason, I wanted to learn to play the piano. So I asked my parents for lessons, and they were definitely not going to buy me a piano, way too expensive. So they ended up buying me a keyboard, and I was pretty good. But what I learned was you have to actually practice to get better at this, at playing music.
yes, you
Yep.
do.
So I was wondering, do you have any stories of learning to play music or?
I have quite a few, actually. I think I really am attracted to music and I would love to be able to play music. And I was always sort of a theatery person. So it was always a big part of my life, music. And I think I was searching probably for my creative outlet as a child all the time. And of course, everyone wants you to do music. So I remember my first incident with music learning was with violin. They had violin every time. We had to sign up for it if you wanted to do violin and all this stuff. And I remember clearly that my autistic brain did not understand the question about signing up or what we had to do or what was required of us. And I felt like I had to sign up for some reason, and I wasn't interested in violin at all, but I had misunderstood the instructions and signed myself up for violin. So I was in this violin class and it was extremely difficult for me. And on top of it, I was in like third grade. So when a bunch of third graders are trying to learn violin, it's not very sensory friendly. And so it was really uncomfortable for me to be in this classroom. And so I ended up, telling my mom what happened and being embarrassed and having her get me out of the class and whatnot. Later than that, piano was attempted. Again, something I didn't know about myself is that I have dyspraxia, which came with my diagnosis, and that makes piano really hard because it's fine motor coordination. So there was a lot of hands on my hands and trying to get my hands in the right places, and that was uncomfortable for me. And I kind of threw my hands in the air about instruments and said, forget that, until I was in my early 20s and I was bartending. And when I was bartending, I thought, well, now I'm like, there's enough drunk people around me that I don't have to be embarrassed about it, but I really want to learn how to play drums. So I decided we had live music, and was friends with some of the drummers, and I got one of their kids' old kits because I'm really tiny. So I fit in a kid's kit for drums, and I tried to learn drums. But again, dyspraxia being the culprit that it is, I cannot do feet and hands together. So feet and hands together makes my life complicated. And thereby went the drums. So instead, I just became a really big groupie, and I tried to do management for a while. And that was the most that I could do in the music world. But now I use it with teaching. I use it in my teaching music because I don't know if you've seen the movie Inception, but in the movie Inception, right, they talk about how you're going to these deep dream states, and they can put you into the deep dream states. And what you need to get out of them is this kick. And kicks can come in different forms. They can be, physical, or they can be memories, and they can be music, whatever. And the idea of a kick is something that I explain to my students all the time, that sometimes when we get in our loops and we are in kind of a loop, a negative loop about ourselves, and we need to get out, we need a kick to get out. Sometimes we need the kicks to get out of inertia. And music is a fantastic kick. Music can take your brain to good memories in about an instant. Music can create good memories for you and solidify them. It can change your mood in like no time, right? So to me, I think music is this like essential kick for autistics. It's one of those outside sources that we can count on to trick our brains into moving around. So yeah, I have a history with music.
And that brings us to our guest today.
Yes, it does. I'm very excited to say that we have someone else who can talk about the love of music besides me, and that is Bruce Petherick. He is a neurodiverse composer and musician born in Melbourne, Australia, and now living in Canada. He spent many years recording and touring with various bands and sundry styles, and he now concentrates on playing and recording his own music. He invites the listener into his music, letting them hear the intimate sound of the piano to let the music emerge rather than trying to force it. His music is heavily influenced by classical music, especially Ravel, Debussy, and Koechlin. and more important, contemporary sounds like Ryuki Sakamoto, Olafur Arnold, Nils Fram, and Max Richter. So please welcome Bruce.
Hi.
Hey, Bruce, how are you? Welcome to our little show here where we talk about our neurodiverse interests. So
Thank you.
I'm sure that Doug has his questions ready because he always does research. So I will let him get over and start.
Well, I don't want to assume anything, Bruce, but is music a special interest for you? And if so, how did it come about initially?
Definitely music is a special interest. Music is my big special interest. Um, Funnily enough, when you both were talking about music lessons as a kid, I was hoping you weren't going to ask me because I didn't have music lessons until I was in high school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, my dad's a really, really good piano player, and we had a piano in the house, but it was never encouraged for me to do it. And then I went to a high school that just fortunately was a music specialist high school, and we were allowed to have free lessons on any instrument.
Wow.
So, duck to water. I studied in Australia, well, in Queensland when I went to high school. We started high school at grade 8. So in grade 8 we had generalized music lessons, music classes, but then from grade halfway through grade 8 to all the way through grade 9, I started doing percussion and then clarinet. And then I was encouraged to conduct, and I arranged the musical in grade 11 and 12. I was music director in grade 12. And all along the way, I was just going home and playing the piano and playing and playing and playing. So I didn't actually have a lesson until I was at university doing music.
Wow. That's
And so,
crazy.
yeah, I have, but from the point that I started to realize that music was special for me, I played for
Yeah.
3 to 5 hours a day. And it
And
was
it didn't
just,
feel like work, I'm guessing, like it did for
gosh,
me to have to
no.
practice and for Doug to have to practice. Like, oh, more time, still more time. That was always how I felt. It was just
And
very difficult for me. And so it's interesting, I think, when what that experience is like for us in our brains when we have that duck to water experience, when we kind of give into our special interest and it gets more, I guess, formed, right? More formed by people's kind of teachings, right? We get to really
yeah,
learn it rather than just our explorations out into the void, right? And so I think it's really interesting because there are some topics for which I, it's my strength. I fall into it. I'm duck to water to it, same thing. And that I'm not interested enough in it to care. And so it doesn't matter that I'm good at it. It's like, yeah, but so what, right? And so music was always one of those things for me that I was always jealous of musicians and people that could make their bodies do what their brains were hearing. And so I'm fascinated by it. And I think it's amazing.
actually, it's funny. I know all about economics, but I do not care one iota,
Yeah.
like at all. Money is a bad thing for me, but I know all the rules and how it works and the mega structure, the macro structures, the microstructures. But it's like, who cares?
Nope. Don't care. And I think that is the autistic brain in a nutshell. Oh, I know that. I just don't care.
Yeah,
Like, I'm just not interested. And so that's kind of, I feel like how our connections happen. We're like, if we're interested, the connections just become their own machine and they go off on their own thing. But when we don't care, man, yep, it's
yeah,
economics.
I agree. I agree.
So Bruce, you didn't have music lessons early on. So are you saying that music lessons are way overrated?
Which hat do you want me to wear? I was also really good at soccer, and I have the same response, is that I think every child should play sport and every child should play music, but that sense of doing 4 lessons a week as an 8-year-old and or doing 3 instruments when you're 8 and the kids in sports who go to skills camp over the summer and it's like it's too much. You're not
Mhm.
having fun. Have those things available for those kids who glob onto it. please go for it. But otherwise, just like everybody just needs to have to enjoy it.
Yeah.
I used to teach in Australia. I used to teach private music lessons in the school, and I was a specialist in the under 8-year-old kids, and then the ones who are in the last 2 years because I can handle
Mm.
them. But the ones in the middle, I basically said to them, come back between the ages of 10 and 14, go and play. I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
Go out in the garden, come and see me when you're 14 and 15, and come and tell me if you're interested in continuing. Because then that's the kids that I'd want to work with.
Right. Yeah. Then
Yes.
we're like nobody's ready until that age to really get serious about anything, right? And I feel like anything you get forced into before that phase, you're like, meh, don't like it. Thanks so much. I was
Yeah.
forced. Yep. I
I honestly,
agree.
I think it turns more people off that sort of forced lessons and the
Mm-hmm.
competitions involved. And so you get a whole bunch of kids, people at like 18, finish high school and go, I'm never going to do that again,
Mm-hmm.
which is sad. To me, it's sad anyway.
No, it's really sad.
Yeah. And the dogs like the music, you can tell.
Yeah. You can hear them all now, right? I have a woodpecker outside my house. And so every time the woodpecker pecks, they bark at the woodpecker and it goes away and then it comes back 2 minutes later. So that is the current state of affairs in my house right now.
Very musical house.
Now, Bruce, I guess it's a coincidence, but you have new music that's out today?
I have a new, let's call it an album because it's a weird world. That actually will be released on October 31st. And I have a single from the album that was released October 9th. So I'm kind of in the middle of the single album sort of release schedule. Yeah,
That's
it's all music.
fantastic.
Yeah. During when COVID started um, in February, March here, I was asked to do a nightly performance.
Mm.
And so for 170 odd days in a row, I played 30 minutes on Facebook.
Wow.
And I missed, it was like one I missed because I was not feeling so physically, I was physically sick. And
Mm.
then there's a couple of autistic moments where it's like, I was too overwhelming, I gotta stop.
Mm.
But what I would do the next day is very often re-record something that happened the night before into a bigger piece. So
Mm-hmm.
the pieces for this album they were all recorded in the COVID period,
Ah,
um, and stimulated from a live performance before. So it's kind of cool. It's
that
like
is
a COVID
neat.
album.
I love it.
Yeah.
So it's available where? Where can we get it?
Um, uh, all the streaming services. So it's only a digital release at the moment because it's too expensive to record CDs and not enough
Mm.
people buy them. So Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon. Um, I got told by my distributor that the single is now available on TikTok. And I say,
Mhm.
okay, I don't know what people are going to do with instrumental piano music on TikTok, but that's okay. TikTok, it's available.
Wow. So it's available everywhere. So I'm excited
Yeah.
to go listen to it after this because I didn't get a chance to listen to it before this. Oh, my crazy dogs. Okay. So we're excited to see kind of what kind of music you're inspired to play. And I know I read your bio out loud, and so we know it's inspired a little bit by classical music. But can you kind of explain to everybody how you kind of come to a performance and come to a piece that then becomes bigger?
Um, yes. I've always been very good at improvising. And as I've got older, the improvisations are becoming more like compositions. And I was lucky enough to be invited to a residency in the Banff Centre for the Creative Arts up here, which is actually just west of me here, but it's a place I'd actually gone to twice when I was in Australia. And I was in a residency called the Art of Stillness that was run by the author Pico Iyer. And we explored what stillness meant to the various arts practices. And I had just, my CD that was released just before that, I had just started to explore that myself. So what I'm looking at is the idea, the music is still, but there's lots of movement within that stillness. And very much the rhythm and phrases are not regular squares. It's all very free flowing. And I've wanted to get rid of the concept of being hit over the head with beat. And so it's very fluid, yet there's rhythm and tempo changes and pulses going on all the time. It's just sometimes a little harder to pick up. And that's one of the things I said in the bio about too many people want music delivered. And this is you stop trying to get the deliver and just let it happen. It's a little zany as well, I suppose. And of course, I think it's very autistic.
It is very autistic. And I actually, when I teach, talk about stillness a lot, because I think we find our solutions in the stillness, right? I think we're kind of taught by society that we need to stay kind of rushing and moving all the time, and kind of, if you're not doing something about it, that active doing, that you're not somehow participating. And yet the stillness gives you the things to take action on, right? And it gives you those answers. And so kind of, I always say, if you are feeling overwhelmed, the stillness will answer you. Like if you're feeling overwhelmed about everything that's going on, make it all stop and take your time in the stillness, because your brain will prioritize for you in that stillness where you need to focus, you know? And so I think we have lost the skill set of stillness and silence, and being comfortable being alone, we have taken from people. So it's important.
Do you know Pico's book, which is The Art of Stillness? Have you
Yes.
read that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was kind of interesting. I think that's the sort of things he was talking about. And at this residency, we had, I think, 24 people all around the world, different arts practices, and how everybody was looking at stillness in different ways was absolutely fantastic.
I can
And in
imagine.
fact, a very good friend of mine, Erica, who lives in Chicago, teaches at the Art Institute there. She said on the day one, she said, "Oh, stillness is really." I think what did she say? It confronts the audience,
Mm,
and it's like, you bet it does. Yeah,
yeah. There's
I really
nothing
like
that
that.
makes a group of people more uncomfortable than silence,
Yeah.
right? You create a silence and everyone's like, they want to fill the silence instantly, right? And sitting in that silence can be uncomfortable for people. And if it's uncomfortable for you, you have to practice
Yes.
in your silence, right?
When there's silence, people are like, "Oh shit,"
Yeah. And they're
they
like, what can I say to fill this void?
can't.
Actually, it's funny that uh, coincidentally at this conference again, we had a woman named Laurie Brown, and Laurie at the stage was at that time was a senior journalist at CBC, and she had a program that used to run at I think 12 o'clock at night, and she was telling us that there's a lot of music she couldn't play on the radio because if the main broadcaster hears silence, they think something's wrong. So they keep on
Oh,
trying to switch something else on. So she would have this like pieces of John Cage or something, or even contemporary pop music with silence. But she had to warn the people, the actual main CBC, there's silence here. Don't stop it.
oh my God, that's crazy. That's how uncomfortable we are with silence.
Yeah, yeah.
Really? Wow.
Bruce, you were
And
talking a little bit earlier about improvisation and how you're really good at it. Do you feel like that's something that can be taught, or is that more about paying attention to your intuition, your inner voice, and just trusting that?
what's the difference?
Mm, yeah.
So yes, it can be taught, I think, and part of what you're teaching is allowing people to be listened to themselves. And in group improvisation is to listen to other people with an open heart.
Mhm.
And that's difficult. I think that's one of the most difficult things, but it can be taught, definitely. Definitely, definitely, definitely. Too much, especially in classical musicians. Um, Classical musicians are often not, they don't want to take risks
Mm.
because they're told they'll fail. And it's like, no, you need to risk. You need to go out there and fail spectacularly because you'll learn
Hmm.
from that.
Yeah.
Or it'll take you in a different direction that you never had considered before.
I think that's the truth for no matter what your career path, no matter what your profession or what you do with the majority of your time, right? I mean, it really is really just learning the art of listening. And if you can learn the art of listening, which you can, you get better at then kind of teaching, right? Because I think learning is all about listening, and teaching is about kind of sharing what you've listened to for a very long time, I guess. And so, and I think in that listening, you kind of parse through your own thoughts, right? You make through your decisions, you know, this works for me, this doesn't work for me, and you kind of create your own truths in there. But I think a lot of people do live this rigid life of rules that are created for them by this outside source, and never question those rules either, which shocks my autistic brain on a regular basis.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, you
Questioning
know,
rules all the time.
I don't trust enough, I guess, to just take people's word for it. I need to know why, you know?
Trust, that's an interesting you've said trust because that's something I'm realizing. I find it very difficult to trust people in social situations in general, but it's so much easier to trust people in a musical situation. And I think I can pick up authenticity or honestness anyway in music than I can in social situations. So,
Right.
but it's kind of interesting. Like trust is the thing is my big autistic problem that I have.
I think it's for a lot of us who've made it through a non-diagnosed life to a certain point. That is part of the kind of cross that we bear. You know, is that's part of that trauma and just not trusting people because our realities were invalidated on such a regular basis that you stop trusting yourself. But then when you find out that your reality was valid, then you don't trust anybody else who told you that it wasn't. And so it really messes with your ability to trust other people's experiences. Like when they say, oh, I've done this before, here's what I know. It's hard for me to trust that because I know my experience of that will be entirely different. And so I've always had to, I'm a learner who has to learn by doing is always what I say. And I think a lot of us autistics we learn by doing. Like I have to learn I can trust you by trusting you a little bit first and that kind of stuff. And it is, some of it I think is a trauma response and I can't quite at this age pick it apart from my autism because they're so closely linked, though I'm working on it. But yeah,
Mm,
it's part of what happens to us, I think.
that's interesting. I've never considered the. I was diagnosed 5 years ago, so quite late. And it's opened up a window for me and how my earlier life made a lot more sense. What I'm not seeing or picking up just like in through a mist
Mm-hmm.
is trauma, that unrecognized trauma,
Mm-hmm.
which is interesting. Not
It's
so
tough
much.
for us, unrecognized. I mean, especially in our world, right? Because it's not what traumatizes an autistic person out in the world isn't the same as what traumatizes everyone else. And so much like our interests are different, our traumas are different too. And so when we try ourselves to categorize our experiences, whether they're trauma or not, we are using that guide from other people, you know, with a neurotypical experience of the world instead of an autistic guide to trauma, which would look very different, right? All the times that you know you risked being your authentic self and it didn't pan out and masking was the better choice and all you know and all of those are traumas They are repetitive traumas. Every time our reality was invalidated. Oh, the sun's too bright, it hurts my eyes. The sun can't hurt your eyes. It's not that bright out. Every time that experience happens, there's trauma, accrued for us.
I have been playing music for 40 odd years, and the music I'm creating now is the first honest Bruce.
That's
I
beautiful.
think, yeah, with the diagnosis and with a very supportive partner, I realized that I was masking a lot, but also creating music, doing what other people wanted, which, okay, you can earn a living that way, but being encouraged to be honest with what I'm doing has been very freeing, even though still I listen to something thinking, oh, well, that's not like this person, this person, this person, therefore no one will like it. And actually, I had a text this morning from a pretty well-known film composer saying, keep doing what you're doing. It's obvious that this is unique and it's you. I was like, yes, external validation is still needed.
Yes, exactly. Definitely. Right. It's just, I think we after our diagnosis, who we take our external validation from is what changes. So like whose opinions matter to us change after our diagnosis. I think as we learn to grow into our authentic selves, we realize that we don't need the advice from certain other people. We need it from certain particular people. And, and we need to shut out the rest because it's not useful. It's not helpful for growth.
True.
Bruce, beyond music becoming a career for you, how do you see that this special interest helping you in other ways?
Oh. Sorry, there's the 4 seconds of silence for the radio to turn us off. That's a very good question. I think music and Bruce and autism have become more and more unified as I've got older. And so it's funny, I recognize music as a special interest, but it's such a core part of me. And I don't think of it, I don't think of the music being external. It's just part of me. So my entire life is mediated through music or how I have approached music. So it's kind of interesting. In fact, I would love to hear you ask that question to the next 10 guests, because I would love to hear their response to how they answer the question.
It's interesting because like for you and for me, with some of my special interests, I feel that way. But I think that when you find a special interest that you are a duck to water to, and that from that you're able to build a career out of it and able to do what you truly love to bring you income, I think that's the win, right? So that it does feel like an extension of you. And we don't just hear that in autism world, we hear that all over the place. Do what you love, right? And the stuff that you're more passionate about is the stuff that you should be following. That's your purpose, right? We hear that stuff not just all over, and so it makes sense for us, right? You will be the most successful and be able to sustain the best something that you truly love, right?
Yeah.
And that you're really good at. That's your strength, right? That's where we should be going. And then for some of us, like for me, a lot of my special interests weren't in that category of things that could make me money, that could, that where the adults in my life could take those interests and gear me into a career, right? Or that I would fall into a career with those interests. And so I think I've struggled a lot to find what you have with music, with something that I'm doing. And so to kind of, I think my special interests were always for a long time, they were my secret reward to myself, right? For a long time, they were you made it through this week, congratulations. Go do what you love, go spend some time. Don't tell anybody though. And so that was a lot of my experience with special interests. And so I think what I hope people will get from our conversations is that when we as human beings, not just as autistics, follow what we're passionate about, we live a better life, right? And instead of trying to chase this other version of success, we should be chasing a version of success that looks like that marrying of what you love and what you're good at, right?
I've never understood people doing things that wasn't maybe not the passion, but our passion. People who just work 9 to 5 doing something. I think I look at it and go, why would you do that? What? It's giving you money, but what's that going to do for you?
Right. And so that's
Yeah.
something for me, like I never made sense to me, but I could never find an alternative, right? I could never say, oh, that's wrong because here's the right way to do it until now. Now I can, but I couldn't. And I think that was always a struggle for me to sort of make that all make sense. How can what I love, everyone tells me is not so good for me to love and all of these things. And, you know, that's stuff I should be doing in my own free time and stuff like that. And so I think that's a struggle that those of us on the spectrum find. But I think fortunately, the world of entrepreneurship is opening up to us, and that is helping to mediate that situation a lot better for us. But I sure wish that I could take back all the time that I did 9 to 5 doing something that I didn't really enjoy. You know, I really wish I could get that time back, but I think we all learn that, I suppose, in our own different ways. Yeah, and my love for cats just never really got me anywhere. I mean, you know, occasionally, I mean, I vet teched a little bit, but I had to work with dogs too, so that was okay.
Yeah.
But you know, that it's a struggle, and it's something I think we as people on the spectrum need to pay more attention to, because when we filter into it, we really do succeed in our own way, and we feel good on top of it, which is amazing.
One of my other special interest is trains, and I don't see that as being a career, which is really funny.
Right. So what do you do with it, right?
Yeah.
And that's and I think that's what we've been stuck with, is that self-limiting belief of what do I do with it? Like, and there's no one behind us going, well, here's what you could do, and what about this, and what about that? And that's the guidance that I think we need more of. You know, here's how to be creative with your special interest. Here's what to make of it, do with it, how to use it, utilize it really in our lives.
True. Yeah.
Well, Bruce, we conclude every episode of the InfoDump Files with something called Inside the Autistic Studio, which is Becca and my spin on Inside the Actor's Studio, where it's an 11, our version is 11 questions, just to kind of get to know our guests a little bit better. So the first question is, what are your pronouns?
He and him.
And what is your preferred stim?
I rock, just as I am now.
What is your favorite curse word?
This is where my country of my birth, Australians swear a lot.
Yes.
They really swear a lot. And so I think the curse word that I use that people find amusing is bother. Because it's something that people don't say very much in Canada. I don't have a favorite, but I know when I say bother, it really amuses my family, and I think that's funny.
Who do you love, and what are you doing about it?
Well, I'm desperately in love with my wife, and I'm deciding to try and spend the rest of my life with her. So there you go. Quite happy about that.
Good. Me too.
You may be neurotypical if
You don't get me.
you may be autistic if
You do get me. It's funny. I often tell my students, as part of my work, I teach music theatre and choir at two high schools, and there's a number of autistic kids, and I always, they kind of look at me in a different way, and I say, I'll show you the secret handshake, and they look at me and go, yeah, you're autistic. I know. We have a secret handshake. So I think it's the handshake.
Yeah, we do know each other when we see each other.
what's something you want to learn to do or be better at?
I've learnt recently that I can read languages, but I can't speak them very well. And that I think is something I would love to be able to speak better languages that are not English. Yeah.
I'd like to be able to speak English. What autistic social media account should people be paying attention to?
When I first was diagnosed, I met Kelly Brunch-Johnson, your guest for a previous episode, and I think Kelly's social media is important. On her Facebook and her Instagram, she says some very important things about autism, about standing up for autistic rights, but also she's funny.
She's funny. We know. Yay!
Yeah.
See how important funny is, you guys? We are funny. We're funny.
What's one thing in your routine you couldn't possibly live without?
Coffee. Coffee in the morning.
Absolutely. Dog, cat, or must I choose?
Cat. Cat 100%.
And the last question, what does autistic joy mean to you?
Autistic joy to me is where I can drop all the masks and be completely confident and comfortable being myself and being in a space where that is acceptable and open.
Nice.
It's funny how so often we have to mask, and that does draw joy away of day-to-day things.
Yeah. It does. Stealer of joy. That's what it is. Yeah. All right. Well, that just about does it for us, you guys. That is episode 3 of Infodump Files. We have done it. We are cataloging the interests of autistic people all over the globe. Come share yours. Come listen to others. Come have fun, because that's what we're going to do. We're going to make autism fun, and we're going to show you that we're funny and fun at the same time. So thanks so much for joining us. Thank you, Bruce, for being here with us from across the globe. Much appreciated.
Thank you so much.
And we look forward to maybe having you back, but definitely I look forward to at least listening to some of your music, especially the new stuff. So I will try and put links in my description of your stuff if you want to send me links. I would love for everybody to go and listen to what happens when you just let yourself be authentic.
Thank you. Thank you.